It has been 1 entire year since I've worked. It's been 1 year since I got laid off, opted out of the workforce, and broke up with the American dream, or Canadian dream, and I don't plan on working ever again. In my past videos, I've talked a bit about how I got here, but I plan to give more detail in this video. And if you're interested in future videos about this, or if you have, any other questions about this, let me know in the comments. So in this video, I plan to cover 5 things: how I financially prepared for this, life after working, some challenges, my long-term plan, and some tips. Now, I do want to mention that I'm going to talk about some things that may initially seem unrelated, but at the end, it's going to come together and you're going to understand why the things I'm talking about led me and my husband to where we are now, which is early retirement. So firstly, how did I get to a place where I didn't need to work anymore? In short, I made some pretty significant sacrifices and trade-offs. So every year or so, my husband and I will discuss what it is that we want out of life. Not necessarily for that year, sometimes it is, but usually just out of life in general. And we do this every year because sometimes it changes. So we both create an individual list, and then we compare and see where we match. And whatever we match on will be the goals that we'll be pursuing together. So the 4 goals that we had were: 1, we didn't want to trade our time for money. 2, we wanted to own property. 3, we wanted to live off the land. And 4, we wanted to live in a warmer climate. Now, why am I mentioning this? Because by figuring out what we wanted, we were able to discuss the trade-offs we might need to make to get those things. And these goals eventually led us to where we are now. So, since we knew we wanted to buy a home, for example, we knew we had to save toward that. So we both worked with a focus on saving. We didn't have a particular amount in mind at that point. We just kind of worked towards saving as much as we could. Now, we knew that in Ontario, where we lived, we'd never be able to afford a home by ourselves. A down payment would take forever to save for. So, since we knew we wanted to own a home fairly soon, we decided to look outside of Ontario. And that's where we found our home, in Saskatchewan, in a place where we had no family, no friends, or knew anyone. So we packed up all of our stuff and moved out to Saskatchewan and lived there for a year. Yes, we were quite far from everyone and everything that we knew. But remember those other goals that I mentioned of not wanting to trade time for money and living off of the land? So our home in Saskatchewan got us a bit closer to that. Moving to Saskatchewan allowed us to reduce our expenses quite significantly. We didn't have a mortgage, so we could save money there. Our expenses reduced, getting us closer to not having to work for money, right? And we did have a sizable lot, so there was the opportunity to grow some veggies in the summer. However, we realized that that wasn't enough, or at least I realized that, right? If I'm thinking about not trading time for money, I need to come up with a way to generate about $2,500 a month without working full-time hours, which is still quite a lot. And to make it worse, I was burned out. So the thought of having to work even 20 hours a week to try and make that, if I could make that much after tax, with a part-time job, I didn't think that was going to work out for me financially or mentally. I needed a break. And it was at this time that I started thinking about us making another move. In one of my previous videos, I've talked about finding trailblazers or expanders. These are people that show you what's possible in the world and or can show you ways that you can do the things that you want. And I ended up watching a lot of videos of people who either, bop around the world or house sit or just reside in another country while living on a lot less. And I decided that I wanted that for myself. I realized that that was possible for me and my husband. And I realized that that was probably our ticket to getting out of the workforce. So the next decision that we made was to move back to my husband's home country. Living in his home country would tick off all of the boxes for us in terms of what we wanted, right? It had lower cost of living than Canada, so if we rented out our home, our rent would be enough to cover our living expenses, thus we wouldn't have to trade time for money. We'd still own property, which would become an investment because we'd be renting it out. It's hot all year round, and we would have the opportunity to live off of the land all year round if we wanted to. So that's what we did. And that's essentially how we got to this place of early retirement. Now, how have things been since we've stopped working? So since getting laid off, I've actually been quite busy. I guess that's just who I am. Hubby Bear more or less goes with the flow, so he's fine. So when I got laid off, we knew that we had to leave for Jamaica that year, which meant getting the house ready for tenants, which meant renovations. Fun. So we spent about 2 to 3 months renovating, getting rid of things and packing, and then we spent more time at my family's home preparing for our move. Then we moved, which wasn't the best experience, but we did it. And as an aside, has anyone else noticed how terrible flying is nowadays? I used to love flying. I hate it now. Anyway, once we got here, there was more work to do because of unpacking, which we still haven't technically finished yet. And we haven't even sent our barrels down yet. We got to do that. And then we needed to spend more money buying essentials like a bigger fridge, a better kitchen table, AC units, even though, we were renting. And in between that was a lot of cleaning. So just a lot. It felt like a lot. But I think I'm finally getting to the point where I feel I can get into a bit of a routine now. It's funny. You think that when you retire, you'll have all of the time and energy to do everything that you want, but it's not actually like that. Somehow other things just find ways to fill up your day, and you have to actively fill your day with the things that you want to do. It's very interesting. Or maybe I'm just slow and do everything slowly, and that's why things take so much time. But anyway, things have been pretty all right since we stopped working. Hubby Bear is focused on his spearfishing channel, and I'm focused on this more or less. Sometimes I'll get miserable with him about something, but then I just look outside and smell the fresh air, and I feel calmer. As another aside, Jamaica has a smell. If you've ever been here or get a chance to come, I want you to let me know if you smell it. And no, I do not mean Mary Jane. I mean, Jamaica has a sweet but calming smell. I don't know how else to describe it. And I don't think I've smelled anything else like it. I don't know if all islands smell this way. I just know that Jamaica smells like that, and it smells really good. Getting back to the topic. So it hasn't been all roses since we've gotten here. There have been some challenges. So our challenges, I think, are mainly around the specific island that we chose, right? It's mainly around living here. Any place that you move to is going to have its own set of challenges. But in our case, our challenges included things like buying a car. So compared to Canada, cars are quite expensive down here. They're about the same price, if not higher. Now, I will say that taking taxi is cheap. The local transport is cheap, but it's not always convenient. And if you're going to be packed in there with a bunch of other people, it can be annoying sometimes. And especially if you're carrying a lot of stuff like groceries, it can become inconvenient. The next thing is getting quality items. So I find that many things here are made cheaply, or the items imported are of cheaper quality, but the price is the same as Canada, if not higher sometimes, especially for things like appliances and furniture, and sometimes food items. So the other day, I bought some black tea. I love tea and hot chocolate. I don't drink coffee. So I bought some tea from a store that's supposed to have pricier stuff and therefore better quality, right? Well, I bought this Tetley black tea, and somehow, the quality of the tea was so poor. I couldn't believe it. Tea? It was like they pre-steeped the tea leaves to get the flavor out of it. Then they dried it and resold it. It was so bad. It literally tasted like water. So, I did end up getting a better quality tea and had to throw that one out. But y'all, if you want to support me, please feel free to click the link in the description and support my tea habit so I can afford some quality tea out here. I would greatly appreciate that. So the next thing that's a challenge is taking out money, taking out cash. So we tried to buy a car the other day and the experience was quite terrible because we were trying to use a credit card. Listen, don't come to Jamaica and try to make any large purchase with a credit card because they're going to have the machine available, right? They have the machine available knowing what the fees are, but then they're going to complain to you about the fees so that they can either overcharge you on an already overpriced vehicle or they're going to try to pass those fees on to you. So that didn't work, but taking out enough cash is also a problem here. I guess because it's Jamaica, right? You'll be limited on how much cash you can take out per day and per week at the ATM. And then you're also limited on how much cash you can bring with you on a plane, right? And sometimes the ATMs don't have enough money. So then you have to kind of go around finding an ATM that has the money you need so you can pull out the money to pay your bills. Now, I will say, right, they have banks here, so we're going to try pulling out money that way, and maybe I'll let you know how that goes. But taking out money can be a challenge. And the next thing is that getting specific items or ordering things can be a challenge. Especially this can be a challenge due to the fees and taxes. Over here, you're going to be charged 30% on the things that you order, depending on their amount. And it takes a little longer to arrive, so that's kind of annoying. And sometimes what you want or need isn't here. So sometimes it's more cost effective for me to actually go back to Canada and get my stuff and then bring them back. Now, some other challenges I will mention, not for us, but that others might find annoying, are things like, the water or electricity going out every so often, regardless of you paying your bills on time. It is annoying, but you just ensure that you have a water tank on the premises or some, large water bottles set aside and a way to charge your devices. Sometimes the internet or phone service goes out for a while, which is even more annoying because outside of Starlink, there are literally only 2 main service providers here. And if you don't have both chips, God help you, you're out of luck. But overall, as long as you're aware of these challenges, you can mostly navigate around them. I do want to say, in terms of renting out our home, because people ask about that, we do have good tenants. We vetted them ourselves and we manage everything ourselves from here. But we have had issues where, something may have needed fixing in the home. And we overcame that by selecting contractors recommended to us by people in the city's Facebook groups. So we went into the Facebook groups and, asked around and people recommended somebody. So that worked out well. Oh, and something I did want to briefly mention was if I had any challenges with retirement, because some people ask that. Outside of getting into a routine for myself, not really. There are some people who look at me a little bit sideways when I say that I'm retired, and I think that's because they think I'm saying I'm rich, but I'm not. I'm not rich. I just decided that I'm not going to work anymore, and I found a way to do that with what I had. So moving on, in terms of long-term plans. So as I mentioned, I don't plan to ever work again or go back to a job ever again, but I do plan to continue doing this. I do feel that I have an important message to share with you, so I'm going to continue sharing it. I do also plan to create more digital products for you. So I already have an ebook all about working from home and getting those work from home jobs, a budget tracker to help you keep on track of your money, and a planner to help you reach your goals in 12 weeks. You can check those out in the description below. But I plan to make even more products that will help you achieve whatever it is that you desire. Oh, and color. I definitely plan to keep coloring and also doing more yoga and workouts in line with my cycle. Hubby Bear plans to continue doing what he loves as well, which is spearfishing, and he plans to continue his spearfishing channel, which I've linked below in case you'd like to watch. But I also mention those things because people ask about like money, like how will we keep getting money for our retirement? So it's not just the rental, but it's also these other things that we have going on. Now, lastly, in terms of tips or advice that I have if you want to not work anymore, I have a few. So the first is that you probably don't need as much money as you think. I've said this before in my videos, which I'll link below, but you can have anything. Now, you may not be able to have everything, right? But you can have anything. So if this is what you want, if not working is what you want, what are you willing to give up for it? What trade-offs or sacrifices are you willing to make? What kind of lifestyle are you willing to live or not live? What are you willing to deprioritize? For some people, they are willing to move even further away, or learn a new language, or not have a stable home because they're house sitting or bopping around. In my case, my trade-offs were things like moving away from my family and friends and comforts I was used to and access to things that I was used to. I had to sell nearly everything, but I didn't want to work anymore, and those trade-offs were worth it to me. And in terms of you not needing as much money as you think, I think once you figure out what you want and the trade-offs you need to make, like for example, if you want to, let's say, do exactly what I did, move to another country and live, once you've figured that out what you want to do, then you can start thinking through some numbers, right? Then you can start doing the research. You can start looking into and looking on sites that give you a better indication of the cost of living. You can start talking to people in Facebook groups about stuff like that. But once you've figured out what exactly it is that you want, like if you want to do something like this, then you just need to do the research. And in that research, you'll be able to see your options, and that'll help you understand how much money you actually might need to do this. Now, the second tip or advice that I have is that it's important to create some sort of budget. I think that it's most important to understand exactly what your money is going to so that you can work on rewiring it where you need it to go. And that will help you understand, what you can do to save, what you can save, and how much. I'll link my video below that talks a little bit more about how I budget, just in case it helps. Now, speaking of money, yes, it is good to figure out where your income is going to come from, because people ask me that a lot. For some people, their savings are enough to hold them for a while. In my case, that's initially what I was thinking of before we rented. I was thinking about our savings holding us for a while, and then we'll figure something out. For some people, they sell items that are high cost, like let's say a home, and then they invest that money or they live off of it for a while. But many of us do need some sort of recurring income. So I'm going to link a video below where I kind of talk about some ideas for money, but for this situation. Some ideas are things like some sort of investment that can give a more immediate return. For example, using your car or bike as an investment and renting it out while you relax, or renting out something else while you relax. Another option is to start an online business. So you can start an in-person business, but in my opinion, that's just going to be a lot more work. An online business would be easier to start and have very low overhead costs. So I'm thinking stuff like a digital product or online service or online course. Yes, it'll technically still be work, but it can be less work. It's not a 9-to-5, and you can certainly make some residual income from it. And my last tip is that I think it's helpful if you're less attached to things. The more you can let go of, the more space you make for other things to enter your life, right? Being able, for example, to let go has allowed me to travel easier when I need to, because I just don't have much to carry. So I hope that me talking through this helped you to understand how my husband and I got here. And I hope it gave you some hope, some inspiration, and some ideas as to how you can do this too. I hope I did. And if I did, or if you have any more questions, let me know in the comments below. If you liked this video, don't be afraid to give it a like. Liking the video will help YouTube understand that you like this type of content and suggest more of it to you. You'll also be encouraging me to continue creating videos like this. And if you haven't subscribed yet, if you haven't joined my community yet, subscribing helps ensure that you don't miss any of my other videos, because if you like this one, you're probably gonna like the other ones. Anyway, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.